welcome to the Magic of Joy channel. So today I want to discuss trauma from a different perspective, a cultural perspective, so that we can shed some light on what it is about and take back our lives from it, because we do need to do that. One of the challenges about trauma is that it can cause us to reject ourselves. Most people blame themselves when they have a traumatic experience, and we are encouraged to do so, to see that there's something bad about us. But there's more to the story than that, and we want to discuss and understand more so we can release ourselves from the toxic after effects of trauma in our lives. Trauma is a way of attacking another person by making them a problem, an inconvenience, wrong, or a danger. Many of us know this experience. It occurs when our value or our being is not visible or even desired. It could be because of a blindness in others. There could be something else going on, or there could be some social norms that refuse to accept us. Underneath all the trauma is a belief that change is bad, or at a minimum, undesirable. So how can we overcome this? Well, a joy practice does make that possible. Trauma is not an accident. It's also not necessarily a result of the behavior of the victim. And I say this because we all make mistakes and can do harm. You know, if you bump into something and you stub your toe, that's a trauma, but it's not because someone did something to you. We're talking about something different here. Too often, trauma is what we're offered when we step outside the demands and expectations of our social systems. And its purpose is to keep us in line and compliant. So that's what a lot of the punishment is all about. And just because this is the case does not mean we want to act out as a response. Those who want to control others watch for that as an excuse to be more controlling and create even more trauma. So let's explore why this is such a strong part of our human experience. Some people say we can't escape trauma in our lives, and I believe there is truth to that. Not because of social structures, but because there's always some trial and error in life. None of us escape the learning process, nor should we. But does it have to be this traumatic? I personally believe there are several types of trauma. There are the discomforts, challenges, and disappointments that come from learning and the trial and error process. And then there's the trauma created by those who want to control us and prevent change. Since life is a learning experience, among other things, those who create controlled trauma want you to learn that the only way for you to be safe is to obey them. Essentially, you must give up who you are and your own will to get along with them. And that means you're supposed to give up your own becoming, your own growth, that is, and development, so that somebody else feels safe, whatever that means. Often discomfort between people comes from different ways in which each has developed, which is unavoidable. But when some continue to grow, it can be held against them by those who have stopped growing at some point. And I'm not saying that growth is always a mandate or that we should always be growing. But it is a natural part of life that comes as we work with the ever-changing reality of life. And we each have a role to play in that. So it really should be something that's natural. The poet David White says, half of what lies in the heart and mind is potentiality, resides in the darkness of the unspoken and unarticulated, and has not yet come into being. This hidden, unspoken half will supplant and subvert any present understanding we have about ourselves. Human beings are a frontier between what is known and what is not known, and that is a great way of looking at it. This means that part of us is in the unknown, and that unknown that we bring into the world as part of our growth and learning is useful and valuable to us and others. That's how we as a species have come to be where we are now. It's because we brought unknown into the known. We want to embrace that. Some, though, reject this process, thinking that their answer to life is what life is all about, and that answer is even the final answer. The reality is, though, that there really is no final answer. So trauma is a rejection of both the present and the future, and it's also an assertion that the ways of the past are to be protected and even revered at the expense of the now and the becoming of individuals and the world. Trauma is a rejection and sacrifice of the future. It's actually quite cynical as well as distrustful. It's amazing, really, because over thousands of years, humans have created so much goodness. All of this goodness has been created as an ongoing process, which means that the past has launched new forms of goodness for us to enjoy. So that means if we have always created some new forms of goodness, what is the problem? Why the existence and punishment of those who create new kinds of goodness? Obviously, we want to acknowledge the contributions of the past, but the past is the past. And we also need to be able to work with the issues in the present that need resolving. You cannot be both present and stuck in the past. And demanding that of people creates an unnecessary and cruel burden. But there has to be something else going on here. When you create hierarchies that control a society, those individuals who benefit from that arrangement often resist change because they perceive it as a loss. The controls created over time can be substantial. They can be hard to change and result in rejection of needed change, which also creates considerable trauma for the members of the society. Those who are present to needed change can be harmed and killed, increasing trauma when anyone wants to make needed improvements. I call this the courage penalty, but there are bigger consequences than just instilling fear. These tactics, rather than create the resilience and thriving we need to adapt to change as it occurs, puts a society on a slippery downward slope because it's not dealing with the things that it needs to deal with in order to sustain a healthy society. So, what are ways in which a trauma-creating society can be designed? Generally, it's through hierarchical and dictatorial arrangements. And there are various ways that this happens. Here are some examples. One is having a claim over the natural resources others need to survive. If you need food and I control all of the agricultural lands, I know it's an extreme example, then I have power over you because you need what I have to survive. And if I'm an abusive and dictatorial person, I can use your basic needs to get you to bow down to me in some way or to exploit you. It's not very friendly, is it? Now, another way is by law. We make laws to enable us to live and work together, but some societies bake into the law benefits for some over others. Even in the United States, the land of the free, land could be owned only by white men initially. It was only 50 years ago that women obtained the legal right to own property in their own name. I remember when this occurred distinctly. Before then, a woman owned property only as what was called et uxor, Latin words, E-T-U-X-O-R, which was as a wife. Laws that advantage some over others have existed for thousands of years because of property-based legal systems, and who was allowed to own property, which created basically property-based dictatorships. These arrangements always favored some over others. Another way is by force. Dictators and authoritarians are generally ruthless and therefore have little hesitation about using force to get what they want. Once they consider themselves superior to others and justify their violence and expect to get their way, they usually feel justified in using force. And they usually feel insulted when they have not been if they don't get their way. This is a very difficult aspect of their personalities and very harmful to people in their societies. Another way is by consent. In some societies, the population will elect a dictator because they think that person will stand up for them. And there may be times when a strong man type ruler is a good idea. They have been known to get societies with many warring factions to behave. But beyond that, however, they often have a lot of destructive effects on societies. Authoritarians hold a huge amount of power in their hands, and they have little trouble throwing under the bus those who don't serve them. They can also uphold and serve prejudices against different people. So they're not exactly what we would call egalitarian rulers. Another is by hierarchy. When cultures develop, they tend to create hierarchies, and people who benefit from the hierarchy will resist change, especially if their position in the hierarchy is changed or their benefits are reduced. People with advantages in a hierarchy will often resist any change to their status. So can we change this? Trauma, in a way, is a form of connection. It makes us attached to someone or something. It may be that we become attached through trauma to a particular role in our society, which is basically what's happening. We're being told what we can and cannot do through traumatic experience. It may be used to connect us to the desires of others and forego our own. In essence, trauma makes us subservient in some way. Therefore, it's a way to keep us from being active agents in life and present and participating in the evolution of our society. Trauma creates a big stop sign. We can develop fearful and defensive energies when thinking about making changes when we've been through a traumatic experience. It's a depleting way of living, and it certainly makes change difficult. And this occurs primarily because change is considered a harm to the system. The framing of change as a harm, as something bad, is why too often those who are facilitating new ways of living or addressing important issues suffer trauma at the hands of those who want to deny change. So can we overcome these ways of operating in a society that is so attached to the past that it harms us by refusing change? Well, I can't give you an absolute yes or no, but I do believe that a joy practice is very useful for doing so, and this is why. A joy practice notices, focuses on, elevates, and celebrates the good in people, culture, and nature. Where authoritarian systems and highly prejudicial systems see something negative and focus on a perceived negative, real or imagined, a joy practice does the opposite. And we know that what you focus on expands. Joy is a feeling, of course, but it's also a way to shift out of fear-based living so that a healthier foundation can be created for living. It can be hard to think of life as being about more than fear since we have so much of it. Our media offers plenty of doom and gloom and makes every decision fraught with potential harms and blowback. And so many people walk around on tiptoes or eggshells trying to manage the challenges of our fear-based world. It would make sense if everything was a matter of life and death, but is it? This is the thing. Fear causes us to constrict and contract to deal only with the risk or the danger at hand. And when it dominates, we set aside parts of ourselves that don't support dealing with the fear in question. So a joy practice flips the script. So instead of being afraid of change, it embraces necessary change as an inevitable part of the natural flow of life. Most importantly, it's not adversarial in its approach to change. Instead, by embracing change constructively, we can find the value in change and use it to reduce the unnecessary vulnerability created by resistance to change. Resistance to change doesn't help us a lot. Everything about you serves an important life purpose. And so often we're encouraged to stifle ourselves, not to be a bother, to be less than we are. And it can be disheartening to hear these messages because they can be very rejecting, not just of uncomfortable aspects of ourselves, but also of the best in us in well. It can be hard to be comfortable in our own skin, let alone like or love ourselves, when we receive these negative messages. We need a different perspective to handle this kind of messaging. And a joy practice helps us to understand that these messages are meant to protect the past, not to address needs and issues in the present and future. When we sacrifice ourselves, it's often to belong, but it's also because we want to be on good terms with others around us. Cultures have defined what is acceptable and unacceptable for centuries. It's not all bad, but some norms are overly restrictive. Sometimes the norms are actually harmful, like being expected to drink or do drugs to gain acceptance. There are plenty of situations where that's the expectation. A joy practice and anchor of joy will help you see yourself as here to participate in the creation of a joy-based world. Your commitment is to the larger human journey and evolution. You belong to the universe, the human race, and the purpose of creating joy. A larger understanding of your belonging helps you to maintain your friendliness to yourself and others while honoring who you are and what you need. We all feel the sting of rejection of parts of ourselves that are unwelcome, including that which is beautiful in us. So many people get disparaged for their gentleness, empathy, and other beautiful qualities. When you recognize your inner energies and emotions as contributors to your creating joy in the world, you can welcome them, listen to them, and let them inform you. The spirit of friendship you develop towards yourself will be reflected in how you treat yourself and extend to the rest of the world. We need more friendship in the world, and joy lets us start with ourselves, and everyone benefits. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about how joy can transform your life. If you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and loved ones and anyone else you think can benefit. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos on the transformative power of joy. I'll be back soon to give you more information about how joy as a practice and compass can transform your life. Stay well and joyful until then, and thanks for watching.